Hello again. Welcome to the second in the series of 3 in this trauma-informed caregiving mini-series on connection brought to you by Resilient Winona County. I continue to be Sarah Johnson. Today's video, number 2, is about building a culture of connection. So, as we talked about in our first video, trauma-informed care is about building resilience in ourselves and others. And resilience, also known as our ability to adapt, cope, and thrive, is grown through connection. In particular, we're talking today about social connection, which builds resilient kids who grow into healthy, connected, resilient adults. We are going to practice a skill, which I would call a foundational skill to building a culture of connection, that as you look at this screen, how are you, is probably a question that you've said and heard perhaps a quadrillion times a day in your life, because it's a very common question that we say. However, often when we say it like, hi, how are you? I'm fine, bye, how are you? And just do it in passing and don't actually, mean it, let alone give any time to give a genuine or authentic answer. So sometimes too, when we say, I'm fine, what we really mean is, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. Oh, fine. Fine isn't really an emotion. In fact, it's not an emotion at all, and particularly does not give us any information. Often when we say fine, we maybe mean we're not actually fine at all. So today, I am going to ask you to begin considering asking how are you in a genuine way and answering honestly. So instead of just doing the how are you, great, fine, busy, and just, keep walking, this foundational skill in building a culture of connection is about actually only asking how are you when you have the time and energy and capacity and ability to actually answer honestly and listen actively, so that instead of saying how are you and continuing to walking and maybe accidentally, unintentionally giving somebody the idea that you don't care, actually, that's what we might mistakenly communicate when we say how are you but just keep walking. We might be accidentally, unintentionally giving people the idea that we don't have time for them. We don't want to do that, right? If we're building a culture of connection, we want to let people know that we want to hear what they have to say and that we care about them. So I am suggesting that if you don't have time and don't have capacity to actually hear somebody's real answer, that instead of saying, how are you, you say to them, it's good to see you. I hope we can connect next time we have more time. Or I hope you're doing well. I hope you're taking care of yourself as you continue to walk by, right? That's what you mean when you say, how are you, but don't listen. You don't mean, I don't care about you. I hope that's not what you mean. So what I'm going to show you right now is an example. Nobody's actually asking me that, but I'm going to pretend like somebody's asking me, and I'm going to take an opportunity to actually check in with myself and answer, how are you? So if you have the time, the energy, the capacity to actually ask someone, how are you, and really listen to them, this is what I hope that looks like. So I'm going to pretend like you just asked me how I am, and I'm going to take a moment to answer you. And how am I? It is my time right now. It's afternoon. It's been a very busy day, and so let me think about this. I don't think I really have checked in with myself. I'm excited to be doing these videos. I'm always a little not very good at the tech part, so I'm always a little anxious that I'm not going to do it right or it's not going to record. Also hoping that the content really fits for you. So a little anxious in there, a little tired because it has been a busy day. I've been shifting gears a lot. And I'm actually pretty excited for the end of the day because the sun has finally come out today where I am. And it's really beautiful. It's spring, and so the flowers are starting to come up. And I think that once this is done, I'll take a big deep breath and have some relief that I completed a task. I'm going to make sure I get some good rest tonight because I'm going to be tired. I've worked hard today. And being anxious takes some energy too. So I'm going to hopefully get outside, get some rest tonight, get some connection going with some friends, catch up with them. Yeah, that's how I'm doing. Thank you for asking, even though you didn't really ask. So that was my check-in, and thank you for giving me an opportunity to do that. I actually needed to check in and see how I was because I have been going all day. I hope what you noticed was a couple of different things. One, that when you ask how are you, like you pretend like you did in this video, that you were able to listen to me actually, and if you were with me, that you would be, maybe nodding your head or saying, oh, or mm-hmm, or maybe even saying like, oh, that's interesting to hear, providing some kind of validation. And that when you heard me answer, I hope you noticed that I used some emotion words. Maybe if you think back, you can remember what some of those were. An emotion word might have been anxious, tired. There's maybe some gratitude coming out, thinking about the sun coming out and some of the spring flowers starting to join us. And hopefully you noticed what I'm doing to take care of myself. So there were a number of things I mentioned. So I'm mentioning them again to hold myself accountable. I'm going to take a deep breath after I've done all of this. Relief was another emotion that I'm looking forward to, actually. I think I mentioned getting outside, hopefully. I'm going to connect with some friends that I want to catch up with. So there are a couple of elements here. When you are answering somebody honestly, I'm hoping that you are identifying some emotions, and here's a nice emotion wheel here to help guide that. And that when you are answering honestly, you're also modeling, talking about coping skills. Here's a few coping skills that you might mention among many, many other kinds of coping skills and many, many other kinds of emotions. So that as the answerer, you're really role modeling how to be honest with healthy boundaries, right? So I didn't share my whole life story. I didn't tell you my deepest, darkest secrets. I shared with you kind of a snapshot in time of what emotions I'm having now, and either what I am doing to care for myself, otherwise known as coping skills, or what I can commit to doing to care for myself, otherwise known as coping skills. And when you are asking somebody, so in a reciprocal conversation, you are asking them, how are you? And you might have to say, no, I really mean it. How are you doing? How are you feeling these days? And how are you taking care of yourself? That you are really keeping that answer and helping model and coach that answer from them of identifying their emotions and identifying their coping skills. That's really what you're doing in your scope as a youth development leader or as somebody who cares for someone else but isn't actually their therapist. You're not asking people to share anything like their trauma, right? Like you want to even pause people and say, I'm going to pause you right there. Sounds like you're going through a lot. How are you taking care of yourself? How are you managing this? Who else are you talking to, right? So you're shifting to coping skills so that you are not getting in over your head. You are able to provide that caring, kind, emotional support, building that social connection with them, building resilience through that connection. And if there's more going on than what you can do as a support, you're starting to look at how can you connect that person to more help. And we'll talk about those kind of connections in just a moment. Keeping on this foundational skill that I'm going to invite you after you watch the video to practice. Couple of tips. You want to be present and actively listen, meaning, again, if you don't have time or energy or capacity, you are probably, instead of saying, how are you? You are saying, it's good to see you. I'm really glad that you look healthy, right? You're saying something that is a closed statement. You're not inviting an answer or a question that you're not gonna have the time or capacity to listen to. You're showing them that you're paying attention, and that can look different in different relationships and different cultures. So that might be shaking your head and saying, that kind of thing. Or it might look and sound a little bit different, but you are indicating to them that you care about what they say. You're going to avoid interrupting. That's just a useful thing to do in any case. And you're going to prepare potentially that maybe somebody's not having a great day. And so don't kind of ask the how are you looking for the good, because if somebody's having a crummy day, well, what they need to be able to say is the truth. And that's what you're inviting by asking how are you, when you ask it authentically and in a genuine way. And that's why you are shifting to coping skills. Sounds like you're having a really cruddy day. How are you handling that? And who else are you talking to? You might even ask them, do you want to hear how I've helped deal with things like that? So thanking them for sharing with you, and then giving examples with their permission of how you've coped in the past. You want to also let them know that what they're feeling is okay. Have you ever had a day where you're like, oh, I just don't feel great, and people are trying to cheer you up, which is well-intentioned, but can feel kind of like, well, you're not really listening to me and hearing me. So letting them know that it's okay to have a crappy day. It's okay to feel not so great. There are things we can do to help you turn this day around. You might want to ask your permission to share your own advice before you jump into that. And you want to ask their permission, like, are you interested in hearing about some other ways or other connections that might help you? So to review, you are asking how are you and meaning it, and there's lots of ways to asking that. So how are you might not be the way, how is it going? How's your head? Tell me about your life these days. What's your stress level like? How's it going? How are you feeling? Are you okay? However you want to get to the question of how are you, to get emotions and coping skills. And there's lots of ways to ask about coping skills too. So what are you doing to cope these days? Tell me about who you're leaning on. How are you handling all of that? And who else are you talking to? Do you want to hear how I've gotten through stuff? All of these are ways that you can inquire about coping. So, a couple of things to know. Asking someone about coping and who else they're talking to helps you understand if they even know that coping skills is an option. That helps you also know if they're using coping skills and what that level of risk is. So if they're having a terrible day and they are doing nothing and they don't know about other options, that tells you you might want to help get them connected to some more resources, some more support. It also helps you know if they have supports that they can already lean on. So instead of saying, like, do you want to know about other supports, you can say, who else are you talking to? Oh, you have an uncle that is your favorite person. Are you talking to him about this? Or, oh, you have a counselor that you see, or a school counselor that you're talking to. Can you make sure you have an appointment with them, right? It shows that you genuinely care about them. So it's that kind of above and beyond step of just like, how are you, and continuing to walk. It's you showing you want to make sure that they have good connections and support. It also takes the pressure off of you, because if somebody says to you they're having a terrible day, sometimes we as youth development leaders or people who just care about others feel like we're supposed to fix it, which we can't, by the way. But when you know that they have some coping skills and you're reminding them of those, and that they have some supports, or that you are helping connect them to supports, can really help take that sense of pressure of, I'm supposed to know how to fix it, or I'm supposed to be the expert. You don't have to be. Let's figure this out together. let's make sure you're using the supports that you have. This also gives you an opportunity to model or coach or support or teach the use of coping skills, including the most important coping skill of all, asking for help when we need it. So, takeaways from this video before you reflect and practice these skills. Positive social connection builds resilient kids who grow into healthy, connected, resilient adults. That is why we have this series. That is why we're talking about this. That is why we're providing you some skills and resources to be able to do this. Genuinely asking, how are you? And giving an opportunity to actually hear the response, help them identify emotions, coping skills, and helping genuinely answer that as well. You're modeling and teaching and building social connection. You're modeling those skills that build those connections through asking, how are you? And honestly answering those questions. So, a most important takeaway, as I already mentioned, is asking for help when you need it. There are 24-hour resources you can call from any phone, any time of the day or night, anywhere in the United States to reach a caring, trained professional. So dialing or texting 988, texting HOPE to the HOPE line, which is 741-741. If you're in the Winona, Minnesota area, there's a 24-hour resource through Hiawatha Valley Mental Health Center at 1-844-274-7472. And finally, it is really helpful to hear what you think about this. So if you would take 1 or 2 minutes to give us some feedback, you can get to the survey by scanning this QR code. Thank you for all you do to care for yourself and our communities. On the Learning Guide, you will see all sorts of tools and resources to help you practice and develop your skills of connection. Thanks so much, and hope to see you back for our last recording.